if you spend a lot of time thinking about your impact on people and thinking about the experiences of other people, it does make you better, I believe, at reading and understanding people and reading and understanding yourself.
What's up, Dave?
Rob, how have you been?
I've been swell. How about yourself?
Swell also.
Solid. What I'd like to show people who can see, this is a brain. This is a gift. Can you see this okay, Dave?
I can see yeah.
It's like a little plush brain. And if you can see down here, it's called anxiety. And there's a little part of the brain on the side that's really bright red. I got this gift for my wife, as in, and I love you token, as you do.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm I'm excited to hear about in what setting did do you give her that the anxiety brain? Like, "Hey, I saw this and I thought about you," or
Yeah,
how does
like
that
a
roll?
Christmas gift. I think
Yeah.
it was a stocking stuffer a couple years ago.
Mhm.
I actually got this same toy for one of our coworkers. Um,
Which
and
I gotta
so
know
sh
which
and she
I gotta know
listens.
which coworker?
Um, I won't say who, but she routinely comments on,
I know who it is.
our
That's all I need to know.
there you
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
So she has one as well, and it's sitting on her desk, I believe, at work. So, for people who are important in my life, I'm a
Mhm.
very thoughtful gift giver.
Yeah, good.
Um, but this was actually part of the inspiration for the topic of a conversation today. This was actually also a suggestion from someone who helps us with our show, kind of on the back end, Alexandra. She suggested that we talk about neuroticism, and so I thought, what's better than right now to talk about neuroticism? Before we get into, and I guess part of the reason I want to talk about it is, I think if most people think about the word neuroticism or consider someone neurotic, that's probably not a very kind way to describe someone. I don't think most people are eager to be described as neurotic.
No, which is why I was trying to I'm listening to you sort of roll out this discussion for today. It's neuroticism, and you said what inspired me was my the gift I got my wife, and then also the gift I got my coworker. Which I'm thinking you're saying you're the connection I have is these are 2 people that you believe are neurotic, and that
No,
may
they're
that
they're they're anxious, but we'll talk about how anxiety can sometimes
okay,
be a part
okay.
of neuroticism. Yeah, thank you for helping me connect that, because that could have been not a
Yeah,
great thing to just end right there.
yeah.
Now, this is the anxiety brain, and anxiety can sometimes be um, a component
Mm.
of what we consider to be folks who score higher on scales of neuroticism.
I appreciate how you've explained your way around that, but I think you will still be in the doghouse at at home and at work.
My wife knows the topic of our conversation today,
Oh,
and there was a lot of eye rolls and, um, I think, boundaries she was trying to put around, what I
mm,
talk about, what I don't. So I'm mostly will listen, but
yeah.
I didn't tell her that I'd be showing this little plush doll that she also keeps by her desk. So to go back to what I was saying, most people wouldn't want to be described that way. I think in general that makes sense, and I think what we don't talk as much about are potential upsides. Not if someone maybe is highly neurotic, but if someone's, has some tendencies at times, that isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Mhm.
So, what I'd like to talk to you about today is the topic of neuroticism, what it is, why people generally aren't really excited to be described that way,
Yep.
how it can be helpful in different parts of our life, and
Mhm,
potentially, if it's something that people struggle with, what to do.
mhm.
So,
Perfect.
let me first start by just kind of positioning what we're talking about here in a broader context. So, in our world as psychologists and others who study personality, there's widely considered to be kind of five really big buckets of personality characteristics. So there's extroversion, which again be more outgoing and people focused. Conscientiousness, that's the reliability, dependability. There's agreeableness. So again, someone's desire to just fit in, make a positive impression, those types of things. Openness to experience. So people who are experience seekers, they're a bit more flexible, comfortable in dynamic environments, those types of things. And then the last one is neuroticism. So we want to talk about this one kind of broad personality bucket here today. It's one of five widely understood personality characteristics that we use in our world.
I think it's an important sort of thing to note that there is, I would tell you, relatively little debate now in the field of psychology about those five
Right.
characteristics of personality. There is some, I mean, there is people will say, oh, there's a sixth one, or no, there's not, but that's pretty for the last 50 years, pretty stable.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of the assessments that you'll hear Rob and I kind of complain about that don't measure personality in that way. Like, so for example, the Myers-Briggs doesn't follow in alignment with that, or uh, emergenetics might not, or no, the Enneagram is one that doesn't, right? And so then there's pushback because there's not the foundation of this this approach to personality that we all sort of agree with.
Right. And you will find that most individuals or organizations that develop personality characteristics will somehow align what they're doing to this five factor model,
Yeah.
sometimes called the big five of personality.
Yep.
So let's talk about what it is. So I'll start with my understanding of neuroticism and I'll
Mhm.
ask you to add to it. So if I think of someone who is more neurotic, I would describe that person as someone who is a bit more prone to worrying, being a bit more anxious, someone who doubts himself, their ability a bit more than the average person, someone who ruminates, particularly over difficult um, types of interactions more, especially as it relates to their part in a situation, someone who's a bit more just broadly hyper vigilant
Hmm.
about
Hmm.
the world around them.
Hmm.
What would you add to that?
Yeah, I think I would yeah, yes, I would. I mean, if you said, you have 2 words, I would say it's a worrywart is the neurotic
Mhm.
person. I think that if you look at how it's measured, or like, I think it's really, I think depression or, distress, can also fall into that bucket. I think it's, anger can fall into that bucket.
Mhm.
I think it's when you experience emotions in a relatively extreme way, that maybe, uh, is above and beyond what would be required for the situation. A neurotic behavior.
Yeah, so
Y
it's yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Can we each describe a behavior that we engage in that is neurotic?
Sure.
Just because I wanna make sure that people have a picture of what would be, 'cause I to make it more tangible.
Yeah.
So I was thinking ahead of this, okay, like, what are the things that I do that's neurotic? Um, and I am a a ger I am I am a germ I'm a germ phobe. But, my wife will tell you that I'm simultaneously, like, pretty filthy. So, like, if I'm on a camping trip, uh, I'm not good about, like, I don't wash my hands very much. I'll drink right out of the river without, I mean, I will sterilize it, but I'm not really worrying about where the water was, and I've had giardia before as a consequence of that, and I'm pretty, like, sloppy, right?
Stop. Are you one of those people who do you have one of those straws that you can buy that supposedly disinfects river water so you can just take
I
a
have a
sip right out of the river?
I have a Steri-Pin. Do you know
Is
what
that
a
what that
Steri-Pin is?
is?
No, so you got your Nalgene full of water, and you put a pin in there, and you hit this button, and it zaps it with light, and it kills everything in there, like, in a minute. So it's better than the straw.
Okay.
But the challenge is if you're fly fishing, for example, and you have, like, a bar in your, fanny pack, and your fanny pack gets full of water, and then you eat that bar, you can still get giardia that way. Like, you have to be more, I'm not super careful about that kinda stuff.
But
But
I think that gets at other personality
yeah,
facets, but yeah, go ahead.
yeah. But if you look at how I cook, like, if there's a raw piece of chicken, I will wash my hands and the cutting board over and over and over again. I will wash my hands
Huh.
7 times if because I'm so fearful of salmonella for some reason.
Okay.
Enough that I can't watch Allison prepare raw chicken because she's just not focused enough on the germs. Like, I just feel like there's bacteria everywhere. So there's a part of me when it comes to that where a little bit I'm super neurotic about raw chicken.
Huh. But so it just is it about chicken specifically or just like food prep?
Raw meat, food prep
Okay.
in the kitchen. If I'm by a river, no problem. I don't know why, then I don't worry about it.
It's like situational specific
Yeah.
because I knew this about you, but I was a little surprised because I find you to be slightly neurotic as a person. Like just some of
What
the things that worry you. And so maybe neurotic's not the wrong word, but you get worried about things that are kind of just different than the rest of your personality. And I can't come up with a good example right now, but there's more worry about you at times than I would guess having known you
is I
in
yeah,
like from a workplace setting or
you
for
are the
work
only
perspective.
I mean, besides my family would say that I'm neurotic. You think I'm neurotic, but I think everybody else that I interact with, I've got them snowed. They think I am not. But there is definitely aspects of me. I think you have me pegged. That
Yeah,
I do get wrapped up around things that like the chicken, where it's like, "Hey man, cool your jets. Why are you
right.
so?" But I will get hyper concerned about something.
Are are you the person that pretends to be allergic to something, but others think that you're not?
Wait, is that a
Huh,
this
I'm trying to think it's someone we work with, and I thought it was
that's
you, and
me.
it's been a while.
That's
Okay,
that
it's you.
I didn't know if you were, like, saying, like, that was a neurotic characteristic or if you were actually talking about that is me. But
That's you.
I'm gonna derail this podcast, but let me just give a little context here, okay? When I was 4, this is an example of neuroticism. When I was
Okay.
4 or whatever, I had a shrimp and my throat itched. My mom said, "You should not have any more shrimp because your throat itched." I said, "Done." So I just stopped. I didn't have any more shellfish. And every once in a while, I would have one, accidentally, and I would just take Benadryl. No harm, no foul. Then Allison, I end up getting, I grow up, I get married, and Allison's like, "That's not a real allergy. Let's go get it tested." So I go to National Jewish, one of the best hospitals in the country for asthma allergy, and they do the skin test.
Mhm.
They pour shrimp on my back and whatever. They prick my back with shrimp, and it reacts. And they go, "It's a positive test." And I go to Allison, "What's up? I am allergic to shrimp." And then they go, "Those tests are inconclusive. You have to do a blood draw." So, okay, fine. So they take more money. They
You did the
blood
blood draw.
yeah.
Oh,
They
okay.
drop the shrimp in there, whatever they do, the blood boils, positive test again. And I go, "Throat itched, positive skin test, positive blood draw, feels like I'm allergic." The doctors go, "I mean, it's positive, but you never know. It could be a false positive, inconclusive. The only way to really know is for you to come in here and have a lobster." And I said, Thanks, but no thanks. I'll just avoid the shrimp moving forward or the shellfish moving forward." So does that sound like I'm neurotic, or is there a lot of data suggesting maybe I should avoid shellfish?
It sounds like you're missing parts of the story. I know we've both said on the show multiple times that it would be funny to have our wives
Yeah,
like tell the other side of the story, and I feel like Allison would fill in some gaps that I feel like are missing here.
I don't think I think she well, she would, she'd have a different perspective, but I think you're coming from okay.
All right.
All right, so there's some neuroticism there.
There's there. For me, I and there's a kind of a facet of this characteristic that I will usually get a bit higher on when I'm taking, questionnaires about it, that I usually spike the tool a little bit more, and it's about kind of impulse control. And it's not so much like behavioral, well, it's more behavioral interpersonal, like, impulse control, not like, emotional impulse control or anything like that. But and this has been this way since I was a kid. I would get a lot like, I would like eat my emotions. It's like, all right, if I'm feeling bad, like, well, food is comforting. And still to this day, my ability to manage my my desire to eat snacky, salty, sweet, whatever it is type food is pretty low. I can't have like the people who I know that can have just bowls of snacks on their
Yeah,
desk, and
yeah,
then they end their day, and those there's still food in those bowls. Crazy to me.
yeah.
I yearn for that ability to manage my impulse around food, and it's something that I am not great at doing.
Mhm, mhm.
And I'm sure there's a broader reason or a deeper seated reason for that. But
Yeah, well,
that's the first thing that comes to mind for me is kind of that behavioral impulse control.
do you think it's that you're eating your feelings? Like, is there a relationship between your level of distress?
I don't think so now.
Because I feel like I'm trying to think, because I don't have a I don't monitor what you're consuming. Like, I've never been around you where I was like, "Whoa, Rob's really putting the Doritos down." I've never, like, thought that. So maybe I've not seen it, but I've eaten snacks. Man, I mean, we've hung out in that, world, and even if you're not distressed, you don't I'm sorry, even if you're just I'm trying to think, does that behavior change if you're happy or if you're not happy? That
I don't
question makes
think
sense?
so. But I also am aware of it, and especially if I'm with other people, I won't do it.
Oh, if you're around me, you lock it up differently
Yeah.
maybe.
hmm Definitely. Because it's like something that's like, don't do this. And especially I don't want to be known for doing that because I feel
Oh,
like for a long time I
interesting.
was. Yeah.
Oh. Oh,
So
you
it's like some like, I mean, my wife knows I do it.
yeah, yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
I will oftentimes ask her, I'm like, if you see me, it's like 9:30 at night on a Tuesday, and I'm going in for like, my fourth fistful of goldfish. You just need to slap that shit out of my hand and say, stop it.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah.
Alright, well, that's good, that's a good we'll get to that later, but about, different ways to navigate neuroticism, right? The solutions. One strategy
Yeah.
is to have your wife physically abuse
Physical
you if you
physical
walk
violence.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's always the strategy that's out there for most things.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's helpful is a different question. But so we've talked a little bit about examples in our own lives.
Mhm.
But in general, would you describe yourself as someone like as a neurotic person when you've taken these types of assessments before? Where do you score?
Yeah, no, so the test that I have a test here to look at, is the NEO, which is a pretty
hmm
reputable, well-known personality assessment, and I am low on neuroticism.
hmm Yeah. I am also low. Again, the only spike I have is around impulse control.
I mean, if you think about, like, just the fact that we're doing this podcast, you have to be, willing to have the world look at you and think that you're stupid. You have to burn time on
Yeah.
doing something that's probably not gonna ever be successful.
hmm
You have right, there's a lot of, vulnerability and comfort with ambiguity, and so I think people that are lower on neuroticism would be more inclined to put themselves out there like we're doing,
Yeah.
than somebody that was higher on neuroticism would be worried about, "Well, what's my employer gonna think or a client gonna think or whatever," you know?
Yeah. Well, and I was joking with you before, but I would say even more so than me, you are someone, and I think this is part of the reason you are low here is you are someone who does not tend to internalize or ruminate. I mentioned that word before much.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, things slide off your back pretty quickly. I think they do for me mostly, but
Mhm.
not as much as you.
Yeah.
And I think even at work, sometimes I will jokingly describe you as like as the work pin cushion because it's just people can you know joke at your expense and you just laugh along and take it and then move on.
Mhm.
Is that accurate description of you?
Yes, and I think and I'm not sure if I said this here or not, but, we all got 360s or before, I'm not and this is probably I'll say it again. But one of the pieces of feedback I got was that I am really good at receiving feedback, not so hot at doing something about it. So that can be an overused a quality, but I do think I view it as a honestly, I view it as a strength in that I think that I will if I get feedback, I am pretty good at hearing the feedback and then deciding whether or not I care about that piece of feedback. And that can be bad where I will sometimes I decide I don't care about that feedback. I hear you, I respect you, I appreciate all this. I think you're wrong and I will doesn't bother me. It doesn't create any distress for me.
Right.
And I think that we're going to be at odds about that thing.
Yeah. And I think that's a good example of where I'm a little bit different. Like, I have grown over time to say, I think you're wrong,
Hmm.
but there'll be a little, for a while,
Yeah.
there'll be a little like feeling or emotion left over from that
Hmm.
conversation. It's like, oh,
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
Or like vulnerability, like
Hmm.
I felt like I was too open to expose there, and that made me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I worry about being too exposed. Like what causes me distress is not d- is David wrong, but I do get distressed if I worry that I've hurt somebody. If somebody else is injured as a consequence of it, then that will cause me distress. But I'll still think that I'm right. Like, yeah, I feel bad that you're upset about it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
get that. So we've talked about what it is. Let's talk about some of the downsides. So as you think about it in your world, your previous life as a counseling psychologist, and in the work that we do now, what would be some of the downsides to being someone who is considered more neurotic, someone who would score high on a scale of neuroticism?
I think people that are neurotic are to me, they never feel stable. Like and I don't mean like emotionally stable, I mean satisfied.
Hmm.
They don't have purchase around, "I've accomplished this, I am this person, and we're good." It always feels to me, both clinically and as like a coach, it feels like I have to do better, I have to perform better, I've not achieved what I need to achieve yet. It could all go downhill. There's this like worry that I am not on solid footing, and it's a big calorie burner, and that the calories burnt there prevent you from connecting with people, feeling good
Hmm.
about yourself, feeling good about your work, deciding how you wanna allocate your time. I think, that's where it causes a problem.
Yep. I think broadly speaking, you're right. Uh, I would add to that or complement what you're saying there by just there's a term called emotional contagion, which is the tendency for someone to be a bit more attuned to. So the upside, they're more attuned to the emotions of people around them, but sometimes the downside is they internalize those emotions around them. And I find folks who may score a bit higher on scales around neuroticism to have a high degree of emotional contagion. And I think the example I just provided shares the upside and the downside. But again, the downside is internalizing what's going on, potentially ruminating about it, worrying about maybe themselves
Mhm.
first,
Mhm.
but certainly also people in the room around them and what's going to happen. So
Can
that
you
stable footing, I think that makes sense.
can you go back to when you say, internalizing what's going on around them, are you meaning, internalizing it like it's my fault? Or internalizing it like I'm having sympathy for you, I'm experiencing the
Mm,
emotions, or I'm having empathy for you? What do you mean by internalize?
more the former. Like if something is uncomfortable, if they're experiencing discomfort, I tend to find folks who are higher here more internalize it as if something is going on, it might be my fault, or at least I'm viewing it through a lens of how it's
Yeah.
affecting me first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. My fault versus how I'm concerned with how it's affecting me are I think, 2 separate things.
Okay.
One is, like, if you and I have conflict or whatever, let's just say you said, "David, you did a terrible job on that podcast." I could personalize it and go, "I suck at this." Or I could that's one part of it. The other part of
Yeah.
it is I could feel distress just because you're distressed. I could I could have your same level of
Yeah.
distress.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Or I'm feeling it because Rob's upset, so then I'm gonna be upset, even though I don't think it's my fault, but I still feel the distress.
Yeah. I, I think it's both. It's probably more the latter, I would say, in that situation is just feeling the distress and then me internalizing
I'm just
that
picking that
distress.
up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point, though, is obviously for the purposes of our conversation, we're focusing on this one attribute or characteristic. But of course, the more interesting conversation can sometimes be how do all of these big five characteristics intersect with each other?
Yeah.
Because
Which
part of what you were saying before is hey, if I have a strong desire to come across in a positive light, I mentioned one of the other characteristics is agreeableness.
Mhm.
Well, maybe it's not that I'm really, you know, I'm not very, high on neuroticism, but I am really high on agreeableness, which for me is the case.
Yes. Right.
And so it's
Right.
like, and some of your examples too, it's like, well, I feel bad if I've hurt someone, but maybe I'm not going to ruminate about it for weeks on end.
Yep. Yep. And
Yeah.
and that's why, you'll hear the 2 of us and other psychologists get persnickety about oversimplified personality assessments. Because if you just say to somebody, "Whatever, you're an extrovert," as though that does not that is not your personality is so nuanced that it's very difficult to have it categorized by a single tool like that. Because I mean, we're talking about neuroticism, for example. I mean, you and I have gone back and forth on like 6 different iterations of what that might look like for different
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
right? It's a very nuanced thing, any of these personality traits.
Uh, Most definitely. And to just hit home your point, you are not extroverted or introverted. It's a spectrum. Like none of us are, I mean, some of us, I guess, or can be really far on either end of those spectrums. And I think the same thing is true here. As you and I talked about, most people will have some neurotic tendencies. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are highly neurotic. It means that you're a person, that there's always some tendency about any personality characteristic that we probably have at some point or another. So I think that just the caution there is not to look at it as a black and white yes or no type of framework. Yeah. What about in relationships? So you and I will go to, at least I will go to a workplace setting more. But what about people who may be a bit more neurotic? What is that like in a romantic relationship?
That's a good question. What is that like? Well, my first thought is it probably my first thought is there's gotta be an overlap with your attachment site type.
Yes.
Right? Like a securely attached person probably won't show up in a neurotic way, or they're less likely to show up in a neurotic way in a relationship. But you could be, you could struggle to trust people or trust that it's going to work out well, or trust that you're being loved, or trust that you're being, the trust and then the composure tied to that, I
Hmm.
think can be limited if you're that's a neurotic characteristic.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that you know in romantic relationships, the first thing that comes to mind for me is like a defensiveness. Like if I'm having a discussion or maybe more of an argument with my wife,
Hmm. Hmm.
and she is highly neurotic, then she may be more likely to be very defensive because she feels more personally attacked.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that can make having those types of conversations very difficult.
Hmm.
Whereas if she's not as much, then she's not going to personalize it
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. So I would, when you asked me the question, my first thought was the amount of distress that somebody experiences, like with their if their partner leaves and then comes home and they're like, "Where have you been?" Or like, "Do you want to track your
Yeah.
partner? Like, do you want to track your partner's location on their phone, or do you want to go through your partner's phone?" All of that, like, I don't trust them. They're not here for me. The agitation around it,
Hmm.
I feel like it loads under neuroticism.
Oh, 100% it does.
And I'll just add to it, if you are constantly, this is like oh, the redneck comedy tour. What was it?
Oh, blue collar comedy tour.
Blue collar comedy tour.
Yeah, if
You
you're
might be
redneck,
you
yeah.
might be neurotic if y if you always think that it's your fault when there's a fight.
Yeah.
If you always go back to, "This is my thing, I wasn't as available," or whatever, that's a neurotic characteristic.
And on the flip side, if you at least demonstrate that it's never your fault, or if you act
Yeah,
in a way you that would cause the other
yeah,
person to think that it's never your fault,
yeah,
then there's probably something else going on there too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
So again, easy to identify a lot of downsides. Before I go on to challenging both of us to think of some upsides here, anything else you'd say about downsides?
No, I don't, yeah, no, I think you've covered it. I think no, I don't have anything else to
Okay.
add.
So again, I think it'd be easy to focus on those downsides. Um, but there are some upsides. And I think this comes up in the work that we do oftentimes because folks who check some of those boxes around neuroticism with some of the tools that we use, it can be easier to say, all right, well, some watch outs for these people are again are maybe a bit defensive or likely to over personalize, kind of maybe struggle with resilience, those types of things. But, and I've had conversations with folks that we work with as well, and this checks out with me as well. There are upsides to people, leaders, to professionals who are like this. And I think one that can get overlooked is one thing we've hinted at already, which is it does make you more aware of the people around you. It makes you more interpersonally aware that folks who are not, who maybe score low on these types of assessments can sometimes struggle to understand their emotional impact on other people.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
I agree. And I think it's a like it's often overlooked, and it's a really important thing for, I think, in our roles for people to sort of see that the vigilance around that, especially interpersonally, leads to skill, I think. If you spend a lot of time thinking about your impact on people and thinking about the experiences of other people, it does make you better, I believe, at reading and understanding people and reading and understanding yourself. So it's not always, I think that the neurotic piece of it can go too far, and that's a problem, but it does lead to a better ability, I think, to perceive the environment for
Agreed.
sure.
The other thing, and I remember learning about this back in grad school, and in my experience at work, this seems to be true. Is creative types tend to be higher in neuroticism, and I've worked with some entrepreneurs. I've worked with again just more creative, types that are in larger organizations. Overwhelmingly, those folks will tend to score highly on scales related to neuroticism.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's a couple things. Again, I have been curious about this before, so it's been a while since I've looked at it. But some things that I did learn at one point in time was because people like that tend to ruminate a little bit more, they may be more likely to engage in self reflection
Mhm.
at times.
Mhm.
They may be more likely to kind of piece things together in a way that people who, again, if stuff just falls off your back pretty quickly, you just move on.
Mhm.
So then maybe there's less reflection happening. So that's one thing, is there's a bit more of that reflection that could sometimes veer into rumination, but just trying to understand, well, what's going on with me? Why do I feel this way? And maybe that causes me to think of something I haven't thought about before, or connect the dots that for most people they're not going to connect because there's not that amount of self-reflection.
Wait, hold on. Is this a like anecdotally you believe that you've seen this, or is there data showing that neuroticism is
There's data.
correlated? There's data, really?
Yep.
Because it's backwards. It's not, I would not have thought so.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that in a second. Well, I guess I could just
Okay.
say it now. But yeah, I mean, again, it's not in and of itself. So I would say it's the coupling this with high openness to experience. You tend to find people who are in more creative fields, for example, be high on both of those. So a lot of musicians, writers, poets, things like that, artists in general
Uh-huh.
will tend to score
Okay.
higher on openness to experience and neuroticism. And I read some interesting research a while back that would indicate that again, part of the reason for that is because these people are more feeling types.
Mhm.
That's also a way that they can express what's going on inside and get it out. And so that helps. It's almost like a management skill set that they have. That's something they learned over time. So I can write in a diary maybe, and then
Mhm.
over time that diary becomes a song lyric or a short
Okay.
story or a poem.
Okay. Uh, did you explain what openness to experience is?
I did briefly
Okay.
at the very beginning. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to think, 'cause I'm just trying to understand it. Okay.
Yeah.
So open as I understand openness to experience, just
Yeah.
to make sure that we're defining it the same way, is essentially there's an interest in other things. There's a comfort with ambiguity. You may enjoy fantasy and doing things differently. You like variety. You're less confined with like a restricted world. You want a different world and you want to do different things. Is that a fair?
Yep.
If I do a
I'd say
cloud bubble of what it's describing, that
variety, novelty, and change.
yeah. When I think about someone that, and if you said openness to experience is their relationship with creativity, I would say, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. You like novelty and change, so you're going to push yourself to be more creative.
Mhm.
It's an interesting layer on it that neuroticism is
Mhm.
also correlated because when I think about neuroticism, I think about sort of uh, the tendency to protect yourself or the pretend, like, again, like I said, there's less stability there. And then I always think a desire for stability. So people are working harder, they're focusing on their relationships, they're evaluating themselves constantly. And I would think that all of that would stifle creativity. But the two of those together doesn't. That's interesting.
Yeah, if you think about it, like you as you mentioned, and I like this term you use, stable footing. If you feel like you're not on stable footing and you're more likely to try to understand why, then that can allow for some
Yeah.
interesting ways of thinking about things. It of course can also not. It's not
Mhm.
I'm not saying that of course everyone who would score highly on this is going to be very creative, but you do tend to find this a little bit more. And again, sometimes these folks can be a bit more in touch with, again, emotions
Yeah.
and emotional experiences and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and so, actually, just that heightened emotionality can also be a reason for some of this.
Mhm. Which I think, and I'm lower on that neuroticism scale. I do think that I am less connected to emotion than people that are higher on that scale. Like, I can
Yep.
tell I'm less interested in, or I'm less in tuned there than that was like a big reason why I thought that working as a therapist wasn't the best fit for me.
Hmm.
Because I wasn't as emotionally available or as emotionally in tuned as like I thought I was a B level therapist. To be an A, I think you have to be able to really sit in emotion and like sitting in emotion and really be there. And I think I'm not built that way, you know?
Yes, and I think that that makes sense for therapy in general. I'm similar.
Yeah.
I remember talking to when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in psychology, talking to therapists, to clinical psychologists, and I have a couple of memories from those conversations, but one was that is just sitting in a lot of that, hour after hour, day after day. I mean,
Yeah.
I think even for folks who are comfortable with that, it gets a bit overwhelming at times. And for me, would get overwhelming more quickly. Other upsides that you see.
Well, I think that the anxiety or the distress leads to positive behavior. Often you're more thoughtful or careful in how you are in your relationships. I think you're
Hmm.
more thoughtful, more careful in how you approach your work. I think I think that the neuroticism can drive conscientiousness or
Yep.
conscientious behaviors. I think that
Yep.
I think that it's funny. Like I look at all of these like extreme performers, like the ultra marathon runners or the whatever people that do really abnormal things, and I always think there's neuroticism there that's driving this incredible
There's
behavior.
something.
There's
Yeah.
something going on that's leading to you having this need to go do this wild thing.
There definitely has to be something there. And the other interesting
Mhm.
thing is there's some research. Well, first, anything else you would say on upsides?
Yeah, I think that I feel bad. That's all I got.
Yeah.
That's just a couple of upsides, but I think it does lead to positive behavior.
Yeah,
I guess
for sure.
I'm hedging on the upside because I think it's not great if the reason for your positive behavior is neuroticism.
Right.
I mean, I think that you can say like, oh, look, I'm whatever. I'm eating healthy because I'm neurotic. Well, if that's the reason why you're eating healthy,
Right.
I wish there was other reasons why you're eating healthy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think, of course, a lot of it, to your point earlier, does likely stem, and there's research on this too, that stems from experiences earlier on in your life that can cause people to, factor higher in this situation.
I do feel like I we haven't talked about 'em, I think we should, the downside of being low on it, because I think we have in our mind that there's, these are all a high score is always gonna be bad when it comes to neuroticism. I think a low score, and you and I are both low, I think the challenge with it is, yes, we may not pick up as much stuff or worry as much interpersonally, but when there are big things going on, someone who's lower on neuroticism or who is really low on neuroticism may come across like, they're dead behind the eyes because they're not clocking that there's a negative energy about this thing. And that can be a very frustrating characteristic to have.
Yes. It's I will oftentimes describe people who are low here is it just even if they are clocking it, they don't come across as they're clocking the impact that they or others around them have on people and just move on. And especially in an organizational setting, I mean, I guess in most settings that's not great, but in an organizational setting, if you're trying to lead people and have people want to be, want to work with and for you, in a lot of situations, not all, but in a lot of situations, that's not gonna be great.
Yeah. Somebody who is in the extreme, somebody who is antisocial or someone who's a psychopath would be low on neuroticism. That's so not that Rob and I are there, but that would be one of the characteristics that that personality type would have.
Yeah,
Is just doesn't care about anything, not stressed out, does no distress or fluctuation based on the environment.
and I think to your point, I'll talk about how my low neuroticism comes out to me, and again, the first thing that I can think of is my parenting style, and how sometimes I can over-index on get over the emotion and move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Like, are you crying again? I
Yeah.
don't always say that. Sometimes, unfortunately, I do say that, but most of the time, I am thinking in my head, like, really, are you crying again?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or are you upset about this? And I have no patience for it. So
Yeah.
what my kids might see in those situations is me yelling or getting very angry. But
Mhm.
the reasoning behind that is that thought process. And part of the reason that thought process exists in the first place, at least in part,
Mhm.
is due to this. Whereas my wife, who is a bit more, again, emotionally aware
Mhm.
and a bit more emotionally sensitive than I am, it takes her longer to get there.
Yeah. 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 That's funny because I think I did the exact same thing, and I never put those together, but I think I do that.
Yeah.
I also have there's many times where I remember I used to when I was in grad school, I worked at Nordstrom. I sold
Mhm.
women's shoes, and I remember I would be
How did
selling
that
shoes.
happen?
First of all, that is the best job. That is the best job. But that's how I paid for school, paid for my
Mhm.
rent and stuff. And, I remember whatever, doing selling shoes, and I go back to the counter to ring somebody up, and my boss was there, and the boss was like, "You cannot ask the customers about their divorce. Like, you're asking way too intense questions." And I was like, "What are you talking? We're just talking." And I still to this day, I feel like the customer appreciated that I was so interested in her.
Yeah.
I don't always clock that this could be a sensitive thing that we're talking about. I would
Right.
just sort of bulldoze my way in and not realize that this might be touchy for someone
Right.
that's just getting out,
Mhm. Mhm.
that's too low neuroticism characteristic.
Well, I have good news for you, Dave.
What do we got?
The research would indicate that over time, people become even less neurotic.
Oh, good. Okay, so I'm going
So
downhill.
for you, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where it goes. I don't know where the floor is for you, but it may exist. Unfortunately for Allison, you might want to let
Mhm.
her know that she can expect even less.
She has to be a very
Um,
patient woman.
that's right. But some of these personality characteristics they do tend to change over time. You know, some of them are bell curves, some of them are just straight lines. And what you'll see with neuroticism is in general, folks who are a bit younger can be a bit more neurotic, and over time, people tend to mellow out
Mm,
a little bit more. And I don't know, maybe I'm just backing my way into this, but that makes sense to me.
yeah. Yeah.
That, at least for the average person who doesn't have who isn't struggling a ton or anything like that. Yeah, life just becomes more let things roll off my back a little bit more easily. I mean, that's certainly, I guess maybe I'm projecting. That's my experience.
It is.
Me
It
at
was
25 versus me at 40, a lot more things are rolling off my back.
I would be curious what the impact of other things are. Because it makes sense. Absolutely that as you get older, you get to know yourself. You're happier with who you are, or you're more content with who you are. So less neuroticism. But I do think there seems to be like a crossroads, or there's a split when you hit a certain age, like retirement age. The kids leave the house, and that those happiness curves in general, people are really happy, then they have kids and it's a nightmare, and then the kids leave, and then they have grandkids and they're happy again. But I feel like there's also a split there for some people where they go straight down because they kind of have this, they're not in the generativity phase of their life, they're distressed about how things are. And I wonder if neuroticism, like, there are some people who at that age sort of isolate and become more distressed. At least in my, I have no data to support this. I'm just thinking about it. It does seem like there's a split there at that stage of life for some.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess for some people, but I would say that's probably more situational,
Uh-huh.
right? I mean, because I can come up with those examples as well,
Yeah.
but those examples, there's
Yeah.
something that's gone on in someone's life that would cause that to happen. That
Yeah.
might be more the exception to the rule than
Yeah.
the rule.
I guess I could also, you could give me any age and I could give you an example of somebody
Yeah,
who, if things went downhill for.
right.
Okay. Yeah. So
Right.
in general,
Mhm.
more stability, less neuroticism at the end.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so for those who are listening or watching and believe that there's something that they might want to do to be less neurotic, what suggestions would you have?
The easiest thing I think is to, when you are evaluating the situation, to imagine that it is somebody else that you are on whose behalf you are evaluating the thing. So if there's a conflict with somebody, imagine that it was your daughter who was in the conflict. What would be the advice you give your daughter, not yourself?
Mhm.
I think that's an easy way to reduce it.
I, I agree. And anecdotally, I have found this isn't necessarily related to being a bit more on the neurotic side, but it's so interesting when you find yourself to be observing a situation. Again, taking yourself out of it causes you to then be a bit more objective.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then you can see, oh, well, I may be making these leaps, these assumptions,
Hmm.
but if I'm observing someone else and they do it, it makes sense to me. So, how can I then try to implement some of this in what I'm doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, if you're not able just to observe, actually doing what you're doing makes a ton of sense.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. I think, another strategy I suggest to folks a lot is slowing down in the moment, and maybe not in the moment depending upon what's going on, but afterwards, and saying, well, why did I have the reaction that I did? Or
Hmm.
why am I ruminating the way that I am?
Yeah. Yes.
What about the person, the situation, the people involved are causing me to do this? Because sometimes it is more situational in nature.
Yeah.
And so it can be helpful to figure out, again, why, to the point you were making earlier, is it because I hurt someone's feelings and I don't want people, to feel hurt? Or is it something else? Is it more
Mhm.
about me that's causing me to have this reaction?
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I've had people do, and especially when I was doing the clinical work, was a thought log, which is I mean, is exactly what you're describing, but it
Hmm.
forces you to get really granular. So
Hmm.
if there's an event that's distressing, the first thing you should be able to do is, I mean, think about the event, but then figure out what is the actual emotion that you're experiencing. Like,
Hmm.
force yourself to, you can't just say I'm mad. Well, are you feeling trepidation? Are you feeling, is it insecurity?
Yep.
Are you, like, what can you, like, get a more specific word that helps you better understand, what are you feeling, vulnerable? What is the actual feeling? And what occurred? The next thing would be, well, what occurred that is making you feel that way? And if you can pin down what you really feel in the specific thing in the debate or the event or whatever that's causing that distress, then you can more objectively evaluate, is it reasonable for me to have interpreted it the way that I did? And I think that's what you're talking about, is getting to a place where you can be really objective about what happened and how I feel about it.
And of course, I think, as we oftentimes say as well, there are reasons why some people are more this way than others. And especially if you find that it's having a negative impact on your life, or at least components of your life, that's when going to see a therapist to try to understand, all right, well, what's going on? How were my experiences who have shaped who I am today? How have they maybe caused me to react to situations the way that I do?
Yeah,
So I think
absolutely.
that's always a solid response to
Mhm,
that question.
mhm.
I'll end with this. What if you're not neurotic enough? We talked about the upsides,
Yeah,
being more aware. What do you do? What would you
I think
suggest?
it's other people's problem. No, I think, yeah, what do you I think it's honestly, it's a hard thing. It's like, how do you get a narcissist to be more self-reflective? Because they won't feel the need to be more self-reflective, and I think it's the same thing with someone who's low on neuroticism. I I feel great. Doesn't bother me at all. I think the answer is to force yourself to evaluate and understand how you're impacting people. But I think it is difficult to get. I think that behavior is changed I think anxiety drives behavior change.
Yep.
The challenge is that someone who's low on neuroticism doesn't feel the anxiety to do it.
Yes. Yes. So, but I think you're right. That was gonna be my answer too.
Mm.
Is I think helping people understand the impact or the wake that they make.
Mhm.
If you're going through life and you can't remember the last time that you wondered about that,
Yeah,
then it might be worthwhile to
it's
think,
really good. Yeah, if you can't identify the last time you self-reflected, you got a real problem.
right? Or
It
the last time you thought, hey, I probably, you know, I probably upset this person, regardless of whether or not you care.
Yeah.
Have you reflected on it enough to think about and identify those times when that
Mhm.
happens? And if you
Mhm.
haven't, that might be something worthwhile to do for yourself.
Yeah, so in that this is a good a transition back to, you could have your wife smack the goldfish out of your hands or
Hmm.
yell at you for not listening to her or other people.
Right.
I know that's very helpful for me when Allison says, "Do you did you know? Do you think that person thought that was funny? I don't think they thought it was funny. Like, wake up." You know what I mean? I think
Uh
that's
huh.
helpful.
Uh huh.
Yeah,
Most definitely.
that's good.
All right. All right, man. Well, that's what I have for you.
Thanks, Rob. That was fun. See you next
Yeah,
week.
definitely. So again, we'll have John Brink next week. In the meantime, if you like what you heard today, please make sure you subscribe so you can continue hearing episodes like this. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts, or, of course, on YouTube. If you have ideas for us, again, this is um, partly a result of an idea that was sent our way, which I thought was a good one. So if you have ideas, please send them to shrinkspaceshow@gmail.com.